Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Steve Winter. I'm the Vice President of Planet Technology State and Local Government Business. We really appreciate everyone taking the time today to join us for Planet's perspective on upcoming changes to SharePoint Online and OneDrive. Before we get started with today's presentation, I think it's important to understand who Planet is and why the content we're presenting by our consultants today is important to you, our customer. Planet, we are a 20-year-old IT services consulting company, but we are 100% focused on Microsoft technology. So what that means is where Microsoft has a product, service, solution, that's what our consultants are becoming expert on. That's what our consultants are dealing with day in and day out. That's what our consultants are advising our customers on what they should be doing today, and perhaps equally as important, what's coming tomorrow. We are one of the most awarded Microsoft partners in public sector and certainly within state and local government space. Of all the awards you see on the screen today, I think the most important of those awards is Microsoft is the one, Planet Technologies is the one and only winner, sole winner, 3 years consecutively of Microsoft's All Up Cloud Partner of the Year for state and local government. That award has been awarded 3 years in a row, and Planet has won it 3 years in a row. Today's topic, our industry-leading consultants are going to be providing our perspective, Planet Technologies' perspective, on many of the announcements and changes that were recently discussed in the May 2017 Virtual Summit. These changes are focused around SharePoint Online and OneDrive for Business. These changes may affect those of you who have deployed those services today, and certainly will provide perspective on how those changes can be and what opportunities those changes provide and present moving forward in the next releases. Our industry-leading consultants that are going to be taking you through this presentation today are Mark Whipple. Mark is the Technical Practice Manager of our SharePoint and Development business, as well as Dean Morgan and Jed Curl. Dean and Jed are two of our senior consultants working with SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business on a day in, day out basis. They are helping customers live in the field today, and so they have a very unique perspective on what these changes and what opportunities these changes are going to provide for our customers moving forward. Again, I really personally thank everyone for taking the time to attend today. We look forward to this presentation. With that, Mark, I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Steve, and it's a pleasure being able to present to you today with the group of guys that I have here. So we'll start off with SharePoint adoption, and it was actually something they started out the summit with, discussing the trends of SharePoint adoption. 85% of Fortune 500 companies, 60% of all those seats are in SharePoint Online. I think that's a pretty amazing statistic. At Planet, we're actually seeing a very, very similar story, not just on the commercial side, but in state, local government, and education as well. But with going to the cloud, or even in cloud hybrid scenarios, there's kind of these concerns that always come up that prevent organizations from moving forward. So I want to start by asking Dean and Jed, what are some of the reservations you guys are seeing, and how are we addressing those with customers?
Thank you, Mark. I'd like to speak about the two concerns that we always hear from our clients, and their security and performance. First, we address security by pointing out the evergreen aspect of SharePoint Online. You know, in most of the on-premise systems that we deal with, we see systems that are behind in what are considered critical patches. These patches address security concerns over time, and as any security professional will tell you, one of the biggest security concerns is that they have unpatched systems. SharePoint Online addresses the cadence of updates in a direct way and brings to the customer new infrastructure updates such as bring your own encryption key, and then rolls these updates out on a very regular basis. Oftentimes, more than we even understand how many updates are being made. The value of bringing your own key is that if you, as the customer, encrypt all your files with your own key, and then you choose to leave Office 365 for another service. Not sure why you'd want to, but if you did, then the data left behind would not be available to anyone, even Microsoft. So next, we address the performance issue with a conversation regarding how O365 is provisioned. So most admins and users don't understand the concept of a stamp. Microsoft uses a stamp to provision all of the servers: Active Directory, SQL, SharePoint, Federation, DNS, all of the servers that are needed to run an O365 farm. This stamp is then cloned by a factor of 3 and provisioned all at once, distributing the stamps over a geographically diverse data centers that Microsoft maintains. Then Azure monitors the performance statistics on the stamp, and when use increases, so too does the resources allocated for the servers in the farm, and when use decreases, resources do the same. I think as IT pros become more familiar with what's happening behind the scenes in O365, we'll see less concern over performance.
Yeah, no, this is Jed here. I'm going to chime here on the security concerns that we see so often, and really where it's there's so many control options, and those control options are increasing, and I think some of the announcements in the virtual summit included some of those. But really, the ease of sharing in SharePoint and in OneDrive is one of those things that organizations either love or it really scares them. It's like, oh, we don't want to go that way because there's that ease of sharing. At the same time, those capabilities offer new possibilities and solutions to challenges that have historically, been difficult for for organizations when wanting to interact and collaborate and share information across partners, vendors, clients, you name it. So some of the controls that are in place now are, the ability to block external sharing within SharePoint at the site collection level, like to have the entire site collection locked down and not allow external sharing, but then designate other ones that, that the purpose of that site collection is for external sharing, so enable it on those. One of the newer things that's being rolled out, or is rolled out actually already, is expiration links for anonymous links. So that, once somebody gets that link, if it does get shared, its window of usefulness and risk is limited by being able to set a maximum length of expiration for those, but still allowing users to do something shorter. Then the whole compliance functionality within Office 365, the DLP policies, or the data loss prevention policies, that can be defined once, but then shared across all the Office 365 services, Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, provide phenomenal controls over, the risk of having some of this content available over the internet, but still be secured. And then things like being able to manage who the external users are, with either controlling it using the B2B guest accounts, or being able to block certain domains, and so that external users can't be in those domains, or limiting it to they have to be in one of these domains. Those are some of the great controls that I think really are helping our clients obtain a comfort level that enables them to really embrace the cloud and Office 365 services.
Yeah, I would agree. I think those are all really great points. One of the things, just kind of on a semi-related note, I'm often involved in the front end of the process, and I think we try to bring these things up somewhat in the pre-sales process, but also through the engagement of these SharePoint projects, because we get in a lot of scenarios where the question becomes, should we move to Office 365, or should we maintain an on-premise environment? And I do think that there's sometimes a scenario where there's kind of this sort of in-between, where either there's an organizational reason that the broader organization is not yet ready to move to Office 365, or maybe there isn't a specific technical plan to meet some compliance requirements given the size of the organization. And these are real scenarios we run into. And in some cases, even though that is the case, they might not want to deal with infrastructure on premise and everything that's involved there. So one of the things that we run into is actually setting up SharePoint infrastructure in an Azure subscription, and sometimes that ends up being the solution to the specific business problem. In that case, we would either replicate Active Directory to Azure and then build the farm there, or take advantages of services such as site recovery. And I think we'll actually hear a little bit about some of the changes coming on-prem here in just a few minutes. But regardless, that's just another option to kind of consider, and it's something we regularly kind of step through with our customers. Okay, moving on. What did you guys think of the new admin center?
So Mark, I want to say that every SharePoint admin I speak to about the idea actually loves it. The current console is so old school. The way that most of our clients' tenants are being deployed, they concentrate on site collections. And once the total number of site collections get much past 50, it really becomes hard to deal with in the current console. So the new console experience allows the same column level filter we expect in a SharePoint list. It also just looks cool, which is kind of important to some of us geeks. I think the key feature I'm looking forward to is being able to see all of the different site types, site collections, groups, and team sites in the console all together. That's an issue that admins have complained about since groups were introduced. One issue I still have from Microsoft is the naming of features. When I say team site, you probably think of a classic team site in SharePoint, whereas what I'm actually referring to is the Teams application site.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Actually, I really sort of dig the templates being available there as well. If I could pick one other area that I really liked, it was kind of the updates to the device access section. So we kind of saw an update, I think it was relatively recently, just a few months ago, where this new web-based UI showed up in the SharePoint admin, which allowed admins to control access to SharePoint based on the client or network location. And it kind of looks to me like that's something that they spent a little time adding some new features to, and they also kind of added some new descriptive labels and things as well. If I'm thinking about what my biggest concern is, I would say, you can see the screenshot here, right? There, the left-hand navigation is significantly different. And it looks to me like they kind of promoted a few items and then demoted other items underneath maybe the settings menu. And so I think there's going to maybe be a bit of a hurdle for some folks that are used to the existing experience. But regardless, we kind of have this go to classic SharePoint Admin Center still available, and that will give hopefully the administrators some time to adjust to it. Jed?
Yeah, so I think another thing that was highlighted in the summit, and something that we're already starting to see some of these changes being rolled out, is it comes down to there's other roles besides being a global admin on the tenant, so you've got the SharePoint admin, Exchange admins, compliance admins, and until recently, most of the analytic reports, and they've been, including more and more analytic reports, has been very helpful, but they've only been available for global admins. So they're really working to make more of those reports available without being a global admin, but being, an admin over one of the services. And so that's a great and welcome change. And just something that I've encountered recently is with the compliance admin one. Yeah, some of those reports are available, but I think they're still, not quite there in terms of getting all the permissions ready, so that you do have to have some other permissions on the compliance side, because some of the reports are based off of data, for example, on Exchange or the Office 365 Office logs. But for the most part, I think it's just a great tool that is allowing us to more securely assign roles to users without giving them, keys to the kingdom, and exposing risk with having people be able to do more than they can. And so SharePoint's addressing that head on.
Yeah, that's great.
Or Microsoft's addressing that head on.
Well, just kind of a final note, I think that we're going to see how this plays out over time. I would imagine that there's going to be some changes even after this rolls out. But, I would say as it relates to the new admin center, and basically just some of the new administrative experiences in total, one thing that like our customers can actually do, is start kind of doing their homework and getting into it, and then coming to us when they have questions. I think this is probably going to hit first release sooner rather than later. The thing is, like in the front end of the process, right, when we're doing migrations to, say, from SharePoint on-prem to SharePoint Online, or, customers are kind of getting in here for the first time, we're doing a lot of sort of training, and we're going over governance, and maybe we're preparing a run book and all those types of things that go into what the administration of SharePoint is going to be. And one of the things we just encourage our customers to do, and we're happy to assist where possible, is kind of to go back and revisit that regularly. SharePoint Online changes are happening very rapidly, and on the administration side, there's new settings and controls that are happening. And so you just want to make sure that your governance plan and your security plan is representing that as well.
I want to just jump in, Mark, and add that I think it's one of the real benefits is all these changes are added features, right? But we got to keep up with those and know that those are controls that we have to put in place. I think that's why those, revisiting of the governance plans is so critical.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree.
All right, one of the nice visual items of the this year's summit. At last year's event, Microsoft showcased this new page experience, right? It was a completely reimagined page editing and publishing infrastructure with kind of the idea of modernizing the UI and also bringing the capabilities more easily cross-platform. And our own internal SharePoint team here, we've spent a good bit of time actually with the new page experience and the SharePoint framework, and we've been personally excited about it. We've tried to help evangelize it too as much as possible. But there's been sort of a lack of some out-of-the-box web parts and some of the other features of SharePoint that we've come to rely on under the classic page experience. And so that's kind of left us wondering, when is this going to become a little bit more real? And now the communication site, I appreciate it because it really starts to show sort of a more complete version of that vision that Microsoft has. The only problem is we kind of have to wait just a little bit longer, but sit tight, because I would think that like customers should be seeing this available pretty soon in first release, and then shortly thereafter for general availability. Also, just as a quick side note on that, for any of our customers that are using our Evolve platform, new training materials are being developed for new page experience and for the communication sites in general, and you should be able to see that very, very soon. As it relates to this kind of thing, providing a rich, personalized experience in the case of an intranet or homepage maybe to share with external users, what kind of feedback, Dean, Jed, have you guys been getting from your customers?
Well, Mark, I have personally heard from several clients that they're really excited to get hold of this site template. The ease of use is important, to these content producers, although it will be somewhat of a different experience from the previous publishing sites. And as far as the SharePoint framework that you were referring to earlier, I think that it's changing on a daily basis, so the story should get better very quickly. What do you think about that, Jed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic that they're getting closer to what people are actually using. I think some of the things I've seen, the publishing on the publishing side, which has really been one of the features that is required to do the more advanced level of branding, comes with some extra kind of hurdles that a lot of organizations just don't need. And so I think the communication side to the new pages is definitely something that's going to help organizations, especially on the smaller ones that don't want to spend tons of money on branding, to be able to have some great branding capabilities. But like we've said a number of times already, these changes are coming quickly. I think the SharePoint framework, and as they keep adding features to those capabilities, it's figuring out what those are, keeping up with those changes, and then being smart about not wasting time building workaround solutions to make up for where the framework hasn't provided the features, but maybe they will soon. So it's kind of a tricky situation, but the story is just going to continue to get better, and we just have to, in some cases, wait, in some cases, just work with what we've got.
Yeah, and just to comment on something I think you kind of touched on during your description there, Jen. Thank you both for your thoughts on that. I think these sites are really great, and especially, like as you mentioned too, for maybe smaller organizations, but there are certain cases where relying on the existing publishing infrastructure or developing an internal brand absolutely still makes sense. And one of the things I think I've heard from most of the customers I've spoken with on this particular topic is, there's a traditional concern that the traditional branding may be going away, or I've heard, I'm not sure if you guys have, but Microsoft doesn't care about branding. They don't care about making SharePoint look pretty. And I think this kind of is flying in the face of the opposite, right? So to be clear, Microsoft has stated that the existing publishing infrastructure is supposed to be running side by side with this new framework. It hasn't been deprecated or anything that I've heard, unless you guys have heard anything differently. As I see it, Microsoft is providing really more choice. And from that perspective, I think it's a really great thing. In some cases, right, at Planet, we have developed our own internal brands. We have a sort of an engagement we do with customers to help them get a responsive brand, so that way, and we've been doing it for years before some of these new things even came out, but the idea, right, is that customers that use our internal branding services would have a nice web responsive, very attractive with sliders and all types of other things available very easily and very quickly. I mean, we do those things in a matter of like 2 to 3 weeks typically. And the question that I want to make sure I want to address here is, like, if you've done that, right, there's not a risk to that brand if you've used our services. And, that would be something that we would also continue to work with you on. And regardless of which way you go, whether it be you use these new designs or you're using some of the existing publishing infrastructure, or you want to build out some new brands on the publishing infrastructure, which again still makes a ton of sense, we would always recommend that you kind of keep your eyes on these changes as we are, because if nothing else, right, you sort of want fresh designs in front of your users on a yearly or bi-yearly type basis. Okay, moving on real quickly. SharePoint Server 2016 Feature Pack 2. Now, I have a development background in SharePoint, and so I always get excited when there's some sort of new proliferation of development paradigms. And for SharePoint Server 2016, we're talking about the on-premise version here. Feature Pack 2 is coming in the fall, and it's going to bring a lot of these new user experience, the new page stuff we've been talking about, and SharePoint framework directly to on-premise installations, which in my opinion sort of demonstrates Microsoft's commitment to keeping feature parity between on-prem and Office 365. So keep in mind the benefits of the SharePoint framework. It's this kind of view-responsive, platform-agnostic, client-siding framework that's allowing folks to build these sort of page elements very quickly and easily. And Microsoft has provided a scaffolding process for you to kind of start with that. If you haven't yet gotten out to the Patterns of Practice site, I've included their YouTube channel here. You should be able to to watch this video later if you want to grab it and you didn't get a chance to during this particular webcast. But that would be a great place to get started if you have folks. And so at Planet, how we're kind of trying to address this with customers, right, is we're trying to get people moving to SharePoint framework sooner rather than later so that they're kind of prepared. In some cases, that might be providing some training with, coming alongside your developers and doing some training. In other times, it might be doing a proof of concept with you to demonstrate here's a type of feature or function that you want to do, and here's how it will be done in the new framework. And regardless of how we partner with you or not, one of the things you definitely are going to want to do is make sure that your team is getting prepared for this, making sure that your developers are competent in JavaScript, TypeScript, and client-side frameworks like React, Bootstrap, and others. And keep in mind that you can start playing with these technologies now. Even though that the new web parts will work on classic pages, keep in mind that it's a one-way street, right? The classic web parts will not work on the new pages. So I would say get in there and start looking at it. More information will be shared on Feature Pack 2 at Ignite in September.
So Mark, I wanted to jump in here on you were talking about React. One of the things that we were talking about, you and I, just recently was a new part, a new set of user experience parts called Fabric that are coming out that will work with React, and I'm really excited to see that. So Microsoft is bringing forth some additional user experience that'll go directly into the SharePoint framework.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We can try to update on the channel as well with a link directly to Fabric, but that is a new UI framework that's also built into the SharePoint framework. So it's a really great thing to mention. Thank you.
And I'll be doing a blog on that in the near term.
I'm really glad to hear that. I'm gonna look forward to that.
I thought I'd just put a plug in there.
I appreciate that. All right, OneDrive. I'm gonna be quiet for a moment and let Jed maybe take this section.
Yeah, I did want to talk on OneDrive announcements that they made at the summit, because really it addresses a very needed feature, and what it's called is files on demand. So the OneDrive Sync client now will be coming is this ability to not have to sync your entire OneDrive. And I mean, when the week that this virtual summit happened, I was actually with a client, and they're in the process of rolling out enterprise to their enterprise Windows 10, and a lot of their laptops they're refreshing with laptops that have SSD drives. SSD drives obviously are great for performance, but most of them are coming in at 128 or 256 gig size drives. But with OneDrive giving users the ability to store between a terabyte and 5 terabytes of their documents, it just there's no way to sync all those with the limited hard drive space. In addition to syncing SharePoint libraries, so we didn't get very many of the specifics as to what kind of controls are going to be able to be put in place with that feature, and things that I'm hoping they're going to be able to allow the users or even the administrators to set limits on how many gigs of files can be set as a maximum. Can it be set based on a percentage of the drive capacity, or maybe just sync those that have been modified in the last 2-3 months, or some kind of controls. We'll just have to see. We don't know yet those level of details. But the bottom line is that the files on demand feature is arriving to the scene none too soon. As I say, Mark or Dean, do you guys have anything else you wanted to share in terms of like the being able to share directly from Windows File Explorer and Mac Finder, which was also part of the OneDrive announcement?
I think the ability to sync a subset of files rather than an entire folder in OneDrive for Business is one of the absolutely most requested features around OneDrive for Business that we've seen in our clients. And they want control over what is and what is not synced. Also, from an admin perspective, the ability to specify what security groups have access to externally share is a huge win. Let me say that again. The ability to specify what security groups have access to externally share is something we've been asked about over and over by our clients, and it's a huge win for admin services, and something they've asked for over and over again. Microsoft is listening to the requests from the user voice and taking action to address the features. If you have not been to user voice, I would highly recommend you go out and vote on your favorite features.
Great, thank you. Integration with other services. During the summit, they talked a lot about sort of integration between cloud services, Flow with OneDrive, Office 365 Groups and Sites, and SharePoint Pages and Teams. Dean, what was your take on what they had to say there?
Mark, I personally love the feature of integration within Pages for Teams and SharePoint with the ability to pull in data from different web services. We have a client, a large university, that has plans to pull in data from Salesforce to help drive the donation process. Now, this is real-time business integration that will make a difference in their ability to get the job done, and really, that's what integrations are meant to accomplish. That can be a good thing. However, I also think these integrations can be a double-edged sword. I mean, developers in the business will like the ability to create these rich mashups, that connect with multiple other web apps, but admins and particularly security professionals will worry what company information is being shared to external sources such as Twitter and Facebook without the proper controls. Microsoft understands and has addressed this in new controls that will be coming out in the Power Apps and Flow admin centers that should alleviate concerns by allowing data loss prevention policies to be created, limiting the services that the business is allowed to connect with in these mashups. The maturing of the application capabilities have been paralleled with an increase in administrative control, which helps put the business in charge of what can or what should be integrated.
Yeah, great. One of the things that we briefly touched on before was communication sites. And just kind of a quick note here, I don't know if either of you saw it, but there was a rather new attractive conversation content component from Yammer available within the new page framework. I don't know if we've actually seen, one of the things they talked about was Yammer adoption, and I was pleasantly surprised to see the huge increase in adoption there. So if you're using Yammer, there you go. There's another part for you to take advantage of. Changing gears, we heard a little bit of information on Power Apps. Yeah?
Yeah, they did address that during the summit, and I think some of the enhancements that they're making to Power Apps and Flow, specifically like with Power Apps, being able to create from within the SharePoint lists and libraries directly. It's partially there, but the behavior, we're starting to see that the behavior that was previously capable of, or built into the InfoPath tool, which obviously has been on its way out, can be replaced now with Power Apps. So Power Apps hasn't quite been there yet, but it's definitely on the way to really being a true replacement of InfoPath. And so if you don't like the out of the box look and feel of lists and SharePoint list items, it's great to know we've got another option now.
Yeah, I'd venture to say that InfoPath and kind of the general forms and workflow conversation is probably one of the most frequent conversations that we tend to have with customers. Even this week, I've been engaged with customers having that specific conversation. And forget the fact that, the end of life is is, a decent distance in the future. People kind of want to know what's the best solution for us now. They want to move away from InfoPath. They want to move to what's new and exciting. And well, I'd say, Power Apps is relatively new and it still has a long way to go. The story of Power Apps is getting much, much better. Constant improvements from connectivity to Microsoft services and data validations on input field enhancements, and it even improved cross-device compatibility. And I've included a link here on the slide that you can go to if either you are using Power Apps and you kind of want to know what's new and exciting. There's a great resource for you. If you haven't yet used it, you want to kind of see how it's progressing and see if it might be a platform you're interested in, there's another option. In a number of cases, we can point customers to Power Apps and Flow. I think the biggest struggle we run into is more in the government space where it's not quite available yet. We'll show them, Power Apps has the mobile application, right? And it's got a desktop application. It's got all these types of things that now kind of makes the design and development of forms and workflows behind them very, very real across the enterprise very easily. And so sometimes they'll look at that and they'll say, that's really great. In other cases, we may have to point them to partners such as Mintex or K2. I know, Dean, that you've done a number of Power Apps projects with customers. What kind of projects have you had success with, and what kind of feedback are you hearing? And what do you anticipate the upcoming changes mean?
I have done several projects with Power Apps thus far. My favorite was an expense reporting form. I know it seems kind of dry, expense reporting, but it was a really very relevant app for the business. We took an existing InfoPath form and rebuilt it as a Power App with a number of great improvements, such as limiting the user from deletion of the data while an expense report had existing data, and changing the displayed data in a drop-down based on another selection. All of which is easy in a coding environment, but less so in a declarative way. I'm excited about the new updates for Power Apps, such as the ability to conditionally format the form based on rules, much as we previously did in InfoPath. So the biggest winner in this app was the ability to connect from any mobile platform and fill out the expense report. So no more waiting to get back to work to keep up with the expenses from the field. And that was the biggest positive in the eyes of the business. And I think that as we move forward with the Power App story, that mobile aspect will become a much larger point in the eyes of most clients.
Yeah, I agree. I think that alone is probably one of the biggest drivers. I would say for those that are kind of in a holding pattern and are trying to decide what to do, if you are, on an enterprise cloud, I'd encourage you to start using Power Apps, start using Flow. Even if you're using on-prem, there is some connectivity there available to you through Power Apps and Flow. So just because the Power Apps and Flow frameworks live in the cloud, don't be too discouraged that you can't do some level of on-prem capability. And many features are already included for cloud customers right in with the Office 365 subscription. You simply license your users and then you can begin taking advantage of it. If there's some of the more advanced features, have additional costs associated with them. If you get stuck, you want some assistance, maybe converting some existing InfoPath forms that you have to Power Apps, or maybe you'd like some assistance in putting together a new proof of concept for executive leadership. We have programs and we'd be happy to help you out with that. We've reached the end of our webcast. Let us take one moment here and review the questions, and we'll get right back with you.
So one of the questions that we're looking at is the question about whether OneDrive sync can be turned off so local storage isn't used at all. And there is one control that you have currently with the ability to restrict it so that it's only to domain joined computers. And so you could, restrict it that way and say at least don't allow personal computers or other computers that aren't joined to the domain to allow syncing with the OneDrive for Business sites. And then you could also then apply policies within your Active Directory policies that would prevent the sync client from being utilized, installed or controlled in some fashion within those domain joined computers to prevent that. So there are quite a few controls, and those will be able to continue. They'll be continuing to add to those
Yes,
those control features.
You're correct, Jed, that there are some group policies that you can then put in place to control OneDrive. And one of the ways that you can do that is to stop the client from being installed. There's also, you can turn off the sync button in the OneDrive client. So there's a number of different control features and functions within the parameters of OneDrive.
Great, thank you. And I think there was a question about the YouTube link. We will take a look at that, and when this is posted, we'll update that link appropriately. So I think that's all we have for today. I want to thank you all for your attention to the podcast. I'm sorry.
So there was a question on, will we see more progress with Microsoft Team and working more with SharePoint groups? We will see more. So right now there's, we just went over this, there's a number of different controls where groups are concerned. Groups actually have a pretty good governance set of policies, the things that we can do to limit groups and to set them up. Teams, on the other hand, is so new that we have not seen any governance or commands output for that, but that's coming in the near term.
And I would just point out something I've recommended, that controlling who can create groups is really an important governance feature, and we can help with, it's actually required through a PowerShell script to assign the security group and the only members of that security group, but that is a highly desired feature that we're getting requested about, is how do we control the proliferation of these groups, because by default in Office 365 anybody can create a group, and that there's pros to that, but there's cons to that as well. So being able to control and limit that is a great feature.
Well, what a great presentation, guys, and a ton of content there for our valued customers to sink their teeth into, for sure. We want to thank everybody for attending. We hope that you found this time meaningful. I know that we found attending these Microsoft events and then sharing that with our customers in a strategic fashion really helps us and helps our customers as well. So hopefully you felt the same. We look forward to hearing from you. So if you have any further questions, you can feel free to contact your Planet account executive or any customers that you, any folks at Planet that you're currently working with. Additionally, our main site is up on the screen right now, www.go-planet.com, or you can learn more about Evolve 365 at www.o365support.com. And I should mention that there is a Contact Us form on the Go Planet site should you have any questions and not sure where to turn. Again, thank you very much. Look forward to speaking with everybody. And Mark, Jed, Dean, great job. Everybody have a great Thursday.